Hello, everyone. Welcome to my very first episode of Daydreamers Club. I am your host, Elaine. And for those who are watching, this is Paisley and Tokyo, and they will probably almost always be in the room while I'm recording because they are my children. I am so excited and nervous to be here right now. I have been talking about doing a podcast for almost a year now, and the original thought came up when I was kind of like in the middle of rebranding all of my packages, and I was like, something that I love about my job is making people money, and I wanted to take it a step further because something that I preach all the time for my clients and for myself is showing up authentically, because a lot of my clients are service-based clients. So they have a service that they're offering. I'm like, you have to show up, like show up and talk to the camera, let people see you. And so I originally thought about doing like fake podcast. And then I was like, well, why would I go through all the effort of doing a fake podcast for like clips for clients when I could just do a real one? And I thought about this during a time in my life where I emotionally could not handle anything else. Like I was in a relationship that was just taking a lot from me, and that thought just always was in the back of my head. And I would always joke with my friends, would be driving in the car like, oh my gosh, we should have a podcast. It'd be so fun. And it's been like an ongoing joke for me for like 5 years. So here we are. We're finally having a podcast. Another reason why I wanted to start this podcast is something that I truly, truly, truly believe in is to not quit your daydream. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I truly believe that in life, we can do anything we fucking want. And I know that sounds crazy, but think about it this way. Like, we all live, we all die. That's a guarantee. If we're gonna be living, why don't we live it on our terms? And that looks different for everyone. So it's something that the way I kind of view life is like, it's a game that I'm playing in a way. Like, it's just so fun to get to be able to do whatever I want, within my means, if you will. And if you have a dream, like, go after it. Like, because truly, I think anything is possible. And that comes in with like your mindset. It comes in with the power of manifestation, if that's something you believe in, or the power of prayer, which I believe that those two are honestly the same thing. I felt this way for a long time. I also believe that you can do anything as well if you're listening to your gut and doing gut checks and you're in tune with yourself, and you'll know when your life is out of line. Like, the universe will tell you. There will be signs. So again, huge reason why I wanted to start this podcast is genuinely to encourage other people, like, hey, you could do this. You could follow your dreams. Don't give up. Don't quit your daydream, because it is your life and you can make it however you want. Obviously, there's so much to unpack with me just saying that. It's not as simple as that. But if you are going to be living, at least do it the way you want to. Don't listen to the people that you would never take advice from, and don't settle just because you feel like you have to. And don't do college because you feel like you have to. And I say this from my personal experiences. And so in this episode, we are going to talk about my story and what has led me to the point that I am now. Because I think a lot of people with social media and all of that, like, we only ever put out what we want people to see. So it looks like in my life, I'm just always so busy and things are always so great and XYZ. But truly, this podcast, I want it to be authentically me. And I want to show up fully as myself. And I have been putting it off for a while because I've been so nervous. I'm like, oh, I have to look a certain way if I'm on camera. I have to do this if I'm on blah, 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 blah. Like, and I've already pre-recorded a few episodes, and like, you can even see in the episodes where I'm getting just more comfortable. I'm feeling more comfortable talking to my guests. At this point, I'm not wearing shoes. I got socks on. Like, I am comfortable because I want it to be a comfortable conversation that me and my guests are having. And I want it to be authentic for both of us. So anyways, we are also going to, and also with that, like, it's so funny because I'm always like, oh, you just have to get started. You just have to get started. Like, I put off getting started because I wanted everything to be perfect. If you are watching this on YouTube, you're going to see one episode where the room looks entirely different. And then I watched that episode and I was like, I hate it. Scrap it. You'll probably see this room look different a million times because I love changing things. And I also was so nervous to get started because I realized it was like the first time I am coming on my social media and like really, really showing up in having my voice in the world, because a lot of times I'll post and it's always like work related, or it's very like surface level. Here are my opinions on things, blah, 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 blah. It's never like, hey, this is really who I am, and this is like how I think and what I do, and this is really what my life looks like. So it's kind of like scary because I'm like, oh, people are actually gonna like see me for the first time, and that freaks me out. But you know, at this point, I'm just forcing myself to do it because I cannot be preaching this to everyone and then not doing it myself. We don't like hypocrites in here. Okay, so a little bit about me, and I will share my story and how I got to where I am now. So first things first, I am a Capricorn sun. I'm an astrology girly too. So if you hear me talking about that, I am that kind of like, it doesn't play into my story, but I definitely like, I fuck with that shit. So I'm a Capricorn sun, a Capricorn moon, and then a Cancer rising. And most of my life up until I actually started therapy at like 24, I was so like, emotions are weak. I was very much living in my masculine energy, if you will. I always thought emotions were weak. I wouldn't cry. If anyone would tell me like sad things, I'd be like, doesn't affect me, whatever. Like, I had no empathy because of kind of how I was raised. And sorry to my family who might be listening in, but I am going to share my side of my story and like my truth and how it felt growing up. So growing up, my parents got a divorce when I was like 8 years old, like 7, 8 years old. And when they got a divorce, my sisters and I, we lived with my grandma. And also I was the youngest of 3, and we're all girls. It's Dalton, Dylan, and Drew. We all have boy names. No, my parents did not want boys, but youngest of 3 girls. And we moved in with my grandparents. My grandparents are so, and oh my God, I already want to cry, are so the reason we are all the way we are now. Because my grandma specifically, she is an artist, and she really instilled like us being creative from a young age. Okay, not me tearing up. Oh my God. See, look, my Cancer rising shining through. So every summer we would have like, so funny, we would do art projects, and I was so bad at them. Like, I could not paint, I could not draw, I could not sing, I could not dance, but my sisters were so good at everything. I would do a painting and they would laugh at mine. I was so bullied by them, and I will never let them live it down as well. My middle sister and I, Dylan, we're closer now, and I'm always like, you bullied me, and she was like, you were so annoying, you deserved it. But anyways, we would always do these art projects, and these art projects, it was like, I always felt like I had this creativity inside of me, but I could never like reach it. It always felt like I had this like empty hole in my body, and I was like, what am I supposed to do that's creative? What am I supposed to do that's creative? And it's so funny with the name like Daydreamers Club, how I feel like almost so many things in my life have been like cloud related, or, you know, very daydreamy. Growing up, I was a freaking daydreamer. I did not pay attention in class. I would doodle clouds on my homework, my pages every second. Also from a very young age, I feel like I knew who I was in a sense. Like, I had my basics figured out. Like, I knew that I did not want to go to college. I knew that I was going to grow up and work for myself. I knew that I was going to be heavily tatted. I was like drawing tattoos on myself from like 12 years old. It was like I had a sense of things, but I had no idea how I would ever achieve it. And that was really hard for young Drew. So when it came to school, I actually only failed one class. It was like biology. And I could not believe that this teacher failed me, because all my other teachers, I would show up, I would probably be late, but I was so respectful to them, because I always hated when people were really disrespectful to the teachers. They were just doing their job. But I was so respectful that I would have like good relationships with my teachers. So I would always end up passing, except for this one girl did fail me and I had to go to summer school, but whatever. But I would almost always be late or skip class. And I was almost always late because I think being the third child, I was definitely neglected in that sense. This is something that it took me a really long time to realize that I had this like kind of trauma, if you will, is that I was really like neglected. My sisters were like the focus, because one was doing really well academically, but she was like struggling mentally with things. And then my oldest sister, like, you know, she was older when my parents got a divorce, so that affected her in her own way. And me, it was just like I could kind of do whatever I want, get away with it, whatever I want, and no one noticed. But that's also like a double-edged sword, because no one was like paying attention to me. I was not being seen. And I remember in high school, this is where this really started to affect me is really didn't want to go to school because I knew I didn't need college. I remember sitting in algebra class and this one teacher is explaining like, I think it's like the Pythagorean theorem and a squared plus c squared equals, whatever it is. And I was like, but why? And they're like, well, what do you mean why? And I'm like, well, who came up? Like, who said this? Whose idea was it that said a squared plus b squared equals c squared? Like, this is so made up. We just made up all these numbers. Like, my brain just can't comprehend that stuff. And I would just question everything. I'm like, but who said that? Like, 2 plus 2, if someone would have said 2 plus 2 equals 5, then we would all be saying 2 plus 2 equals 5. So we could really just make up and do whatever we want if we really think about it. So that's where my brain was. And I also really struggled getting out of bed. I had no motivation to do anything. And it was like, also in hindsight, I'm like, my parents should have been a little bit more concerned about me. But that, again, the neglect. And they always thought I was really, really lazy. And there was always comments around me being lazy and I'm not going to go anywhere in life. And, Drew, like, how are you supposed to live if you're not going to, like, get up? It was just a lot of that happening. And my response was like, I'll figure it out. Like, it was weird because at 15, like, no 15-year-old really ever knows that things are going to work out or figure it out. But it was like, gut check, gut check, gut check. And then a few months before graduation, my dad, he had dated a girl who was actually like a psychic. And I had never had any experiences with psychics before. And I was like, oh my God, do a reading for me. Mind you, no one, again, because I'm being neglected, no one knows that I am like on the verge of failing my senior year because I'm not attending any of my classes. So she just looks at me and she goes, you need to start showing up at school and you have to graduate. Like, your guides are screaming at you because you have to graduate high school, Drew. I'm not saying you need to go to college. She's like, honestly, I don't see you going to college, but you can't keep skipping class. And I was like, and mind you, my dad has no idea that I'm skipping. So it's not like this lady would know. I've never met her before. My jaw is like on the floor. I remember Dalton looking at me like, you're skipping class? And I was like, no. And that was so crazy to me. So I was like, okay, I have to make it through my senior year. Like, this lady's telling me like, you know what, maybe I guess I don't need college. Great. But at least I have to graduate. Soon after that, I get pulled into my vice principal's office and he's like, Drew, you're not going to graduate. Like, you need to make up credit somehow because you've missed so much class. And so this is like, I don't know if it's the Capricorn, the full sales person in me. I immediately start pitching myself to him. I'm like, look, I know you think I'm not going to graduate, but I really have to graduate. Like, my parents, they don't believe in me and I have to like prove everyone wrong. So like, what can I do to make up for this? And I don't even know what I said to this man, but I am straight up like, I promise I will succeed in life if you let me graduate. Like, I have a whole spiel for him. And he looks at me and he goes, I don't think I've ever met anyone like you before. He's like, what? And he's like, okay, all you have to do is, it's like 15 hours of community service. I go to one of my math teacher who, again, it's like I formed bonds with my teachers because I respected them. And I think at that time too, I already kind of felt like an adult because I was like working and like having to pay for my own food and like already kind of like take care of myself. So I felt mature in that way, if you will. And so I was like, hey, can you sign this for me? He didn't just sign it for me. He did make me paint his classroom, but that is how I graduated high school. It was just, I don't know, selling myself, being like, hey, I promise, like, I'll be successful if you just like let me graduate. I just knew I needed to get out of high school. So after that long spiel of me getting out of high school, was working at a bakery because I thought, I am going to be a baker. I'm going to have my own bakery. Always wanted to have like a coffee shop, a bakery, so a vintage soda fountain place. Like, that was always the dream, right? And then I worked at a bakery and I was like, absolutely not. I am not doing this. This is too much work. So I went into like a sales job and I went into leasing and I worked with that company for almost 7 years. And within like the first 2 years, mind you, I'm 19 years old. I become a property manager. I buy a house. I am working so hard to prove everyone in my life wrong. I remember getting a call from someone in my family and they're like, I genuinely thought you were going to like end up homeless or be 30 years old still living with your mom. Like, I cannot believe like how much you've succeeded. But before we get into like me working for the apartment complex community. Like going back to my creative side in high school as well, this is when like Instagram was starting to become kind of popular. So I was always like just taking photos on my, I don't know, I think it was like one of the first iPhones, and playing around doing all the editing apps. You know how we were, like the photo bucket, and then MySpace and all. I was just obsessed with doing that. And I would always like post photos. I would never really post selfies. I was like so anti-selfie. I was like, look how creative I am. And that is like the first time I felt like I found something that I was good at and that was really fun and creative for me. And at that time, I didn't really associate it with photography because I'm like, oh, I'm just using iPhone, whatever. It's just, I'm having fun being creative in my way. And I was really also like, you know, I was becoming an adult at that point. So I was really exploring Austin and just having so much fun. And I remember my best friend always making fun of me because I'd always be like, hashtag ATX and all of that. So at 19, we go on this like little family trip to New Braunfels, and my grandpa brings his camera, and the entire trip I'm like using it and I'm having so much fun with it. I'm like, this is so cool. And he's like, yeah, you know, you could borrow it sometime. In my head, I'm like, I'm just gonna get my own. And so I got my first camera, and I was taking photos. Like the first thing I did, I was taking photos of like my sister's rings that she was making at the time. And I was like, this is so cool. This is so beautiful. You know, it was like a 1.4. So of course it was like the bouquet in the background, blah, blah, blah. You know, I feel like anytime someone gets their first camera, it takes such nice photos compared to an iPhone that any photo you take is the best photo you've taken. And a little bit after that, I was like, well, what if I tried taking photos of people? And I get my sister Dalton and her now husband, and I'm like, let's go into the woods. And I make her bring like a fake deer head because I want it to be like she was in the woods with the deer. These photos are so bad, y'all. Like, it's so embarrassing in hindsight, but also iconic. Where we're getting, I remember doing those photos. I still remember the feeling, and I felt like I just did drugs. It was like I was high because it felt so aligned with me. I was like, holy shit, I love this. This is the coolest thing ever. Like, I can't get enough of this. And so then I started doing a bunch of photo shoots for my friends, and eventually, like, people just kind of started paying me for it. And that was really cool. But also at the same time, I was entering the career of being in like property management. And I remember my boyfriend at the time was like, you shouldn't do this. Like, it's so soul sucking, because he was an artist. And then I showed him my first paycheck and he didn't have a job, and he was like, okay, well, maybe you should. So anyways, I started 19. I am crushing it. Like, it's one of those things where I was just really, really good at this job. I don't even know how or why. I think universally, I was just supposed to be there. Like, I think that is what was going to get me through the next phases of my life. And it did, because I was able to buy a house. I feel like that job also really helped me learn how to like connect with people better. There was just like a lot of things that I did gain from that job, but within a few short years, I become a property manager, and I am probably like, honestly, I think I tried Googling it. I think I was like the youngest property manager in the United States. I was like 23 years old. There might have been someone who was like 22, but like I'm talking for like a big corporation company like this. So I am crushing it. This little tattooed girl is freaking running these people's apartments. But, you know, I liked the hustle. Like, I enjoyed the hustle of everything. So we're doing the property management thing. We're crushing it. I get a house at like 21, turning 22 in a week. I think at that point I was like, wow, okay, like, you know, I'm really good at this job. But always in the back of my mind, I was like, how am I supposed to do this for 20 years? Like, I knew people who were in the industry who were like 45 years old. I'm like, I'm a 22-year-old girl doing what y'all are doing. And I don't know, I think also at the time 45 felt way older. But it was like also people who were 60, 65. I'm like, how am I gonna be doing this the rest of my life? Like, there is no way. So for a long time, I was doing like photo shoots on the weekend, and I was just kind of juggling both until about COVID. And then during COVID, of course, like I was not doing shoots. Like, I think there went a solid year where I did not pick up my camera. But I was also really thankful that during that time, I always think about this, like, that I was not full-time in my job, because I don't know what I would have done. And I can only imagine how hard it was for people who were entrepreneurs during that time and either had to completely pivot or Like, I just don't know what I would have done personally. So, but that's the thing, is like, I really believe that if you trust in the universe and you have a relationship with the universe or God or whatever it is for you, that like you will be protected in that way. Like, if you really believe and if you're really like in tune with whatever it is in your life, like I think those things will somehow work out for you, even when you don't like realize that they're going to work out for you, and it might happen in a different way that you wouldn't have expected, but it's going to work out. That's my mentality on that stuff. So thankful I had a job during that time. Anyways, after about COVID, I'm getting so burnt out from this job. I am running 3 freaking properties. It's just me, this leasing agent that like doesn't listen to me, and then 3 maintenance men. Being a 25-year-old girl in charge of 4 grown-ass men, it was horrific. That was so, like, getting them to respect me, getting them to listen to me, I hated it. And it started just like piling on and piling on. And I was starting to feel very trapped. Like, how am I ever going to quit this job? Like, this is also a safety net. Like, what do you mean I could just quit and do photography? Eventually, I ended up selling my house. And because I had more than like $5,000 in my savings, I was like, I kept coming to work and being like, well, I don't really need this job. But I also did not feel like I was fully ready to quit because I was terrified. I was so scared. Even though I had like a year's worth of income in my savings, I was shaking in my boots. Like, it just kind of didn't really feel like an option because I was also always told, like, how are you going to make money on photography if you're not doing weddings? And that is one thing about me, is I don't love doing weddings. There's not that passion, that spark for it for me that I feel like there is with people who do weddings and that are full-time wedding photographers, because I know people that love it. It makes them feel high. I just never got that. I only feel that way when it's like branding sessions or one-on-ones, or where I can like make the other person shine and make the other person like be seen by the world how they've always wanted to be seen, if you will. So that is what I feel like I excel in with photography. And being told like, oh, you have to do weddings, you have to do weddings. So I was doing weddings. I was just like, I was listening to so many other people and not really like trusting myself in that sense. It got to a point, and this was something that I just like cannot believe happened. And this is like a story that actually will also make me cry, because I feel like it was definitely some form of like divine intervention, if you will. And it was nearing the end of me like, okay, I need to quit. Like, there was so much happening in that job because of the freezes too. All of a sudden I became like a manager for all these freaking properties, but then they were making me like handle all of the construction stuff. It was too much work for one person, and I was so severely underpaid in that job. Honestly, in hindsight, I really wish I could have sued them for some form of like emotional distress, because it was horrific what I was having to do. I literally almost got hypothermia after the freezes because there was a pipe that flooded and they needed me to be there even though there was nothing I could even do. I get soaked and it's -0 degrees outside, and I like can't drive home because the roads are iced over. It was a whole thing. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. If you can't tell, I don't know if I've mentioned this, I am diagnosed with ADHD, so I do apologize when you're listening to this podcast, because there are going to be times where I'm like, and that's also another thing with my story, is like, you would think that I always think about the times where I was just like laying in bed and had no motivation, and my mom was like, oh, are you on drugs? And I'm like, no. And I was never depressed. I just like couldn't get out of bed. Like, that is textbook like ADHD for young women. Just saying. Like, the decision paralysis, I was struggling with that so much, and I didn't know even back then. And I'm glad I understand and know all of that now, because it's helped me. But anyways, back to my story. So I am just mentally like so burnt out in this job, but I'm still having the fear of quitting, because obviously it's like, it is a safety net. I've worked almost 7 years, so loyal to this company, and I'm just gonna throw it all away. Like, how crazy is that? Which, me even saying this right now, I just sound so stupid, because I'm like, Drew, of course you were gonna do that. Like, why was I ever scared? And also, I can't ever imagine working a 9 to 5 now. Absolutely not. I would actually rather be homeless than do that. So I remember it was a day where I was working at the property by myself. And typically if I'm working at the property by myself, there's never like a moment where no one is coming through that door. again, stressful environment. So it's 4 o'clock. We close at 5 or 5:30. And this lady comes in and she's like, I'm looking for an apartment. I don't live here. I'm thinking about moving here. And I'm like, oh yeah, where from? And she's telling me her whole story. She starts telling me how she just overcame stage 4 breast cancer and that, oh my God, I'm not gonna cry. That for the first time in her life, she is going to live life for herself because for so long, she has lived her life for everyone else, for her family, for her kids. Like, she just always is doing so much for others and then never like doing it for herself. And she was like, so I guess like someone in her family, I think, passed and like left her money too. And so she's like, I decided, after beating cancer, especially because I thought I was going to pass, like, I'm gonna live my life for myself and I'm gonna move somewhere new. I'm gonna travel. I'm gonna do all these things that I've always wanted to in life. And I'm like, just glued to this story. Like, this is so incredible. Wow. Tell me everything. Like, what are you thinking? Also, I'm like, please don't live here, girl, because you deserve better than this place. And I ended up telling her that. I was like, please, I'm not even gonna give you a tour of this place. Go move. Don't do this. And she's like, I've never even been to Austin. This is like the second apartment I've been to. We are talking for like 30 minutes. And halfway through the conversation, she just stops and she looks at me. She just stops talking and she's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm working. And she goes, no. Oh my God, the tears, y'all, the tears. She goes, no, what are you doing here? You should not be in this place. You are supposed to be doing so much more and you're not doing it. And I don't even say anything. I just start bawling because I'm like, how did you know? I have been struggling with this. Like, oh my God, y'all, I have not told this story in so long and it's so emotional for me because I think it also goes back to like, never really fully ever being like seen and like having this stranger be like, holy shit, like, what are you doing here? Why are you obviously living life for other people too? Blah, 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 blah. And that was like something I had just come to the conclusion to in therapy. Like, all of my success, all of these things that I've done, like get a house, blah, 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 I've done almost like out of spite and like for other people and to like prove other people wrong because I was always, overlooked and told, oh, I thought you were gonna be homeless, da 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 da. And so, I really felt like I had to work hard to like prove myself, like, no, like, whatever. Anyways, trauma. So then I'm just bawling to this stranger, which if you know anything about me, I would never fucking do that. And I told her, I was like, I don't think you understand like how much I needed to hear that. And I tell her everything and she's like, you gotta get out of here. Like, I want you to quit. And she's like, it's so crazy that like we're even having this conversation because I almost didn't even come to this place and I just did a quick Google search and I just felt like I wanted to come check these apartments out. I don't know, like the whole thing, it genuinely felt like some form of like divine intervention being like, hello, Drew, even this stranger is recognizing you, like, get out. Like, I genuinely think that my like spirit guides sent her. Like, that is how that feels. So literally within that week, I put in my 2-week notice and I quit. I quit my job that I've worked so hard for 7 years. And when I quit, I have no fucking idea what to do. I feel like I'm like, okay, I quit my job. Now what? Now, like, okay, I have money in my savings, so it's like fine if I don't work for a bit, which was kind of nice because I definitely was really burnt out and it took me a while to get over that. But for the first 6 months, mentally, I was a wreck because when you are working for yourself, you don't have anyone saying, hey, you're doing a really good job. Statistically, there's nothing really to measure your success other than the income that you're getting. And going from having obviously a 9 to 5, a steady paycheck, bonuses if I'm doing well, to nothing at all is a difficult thing to kind of grasp and learn. There's a lot that I did not really realize when going into being an entrepreneur and working for myself, and that is going to be part of my story. I'll share that, maybe not all in this episode because we're already going on 40 minutes, but the first 6 months were incredibly difficult for me. I ended up going back to my job, not because of the money, well, partially because of the money, because I was so having savings. I honestly obviously I need to have savings, but I don't like having savings because my brain, I was like, oh, well, it's fine. And like, if it even dipped a little bit, the scarcity mindset checked in. And I would get into this severe scarcity mindset where that's all I would focus on. And it really, really, really hindered me. So I went back to the job, and then I'm back at the job. And I'm like, well, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I don't want to be here. That lasted like a month. I couldn't do it. But it did kind of like give me like okay, Drew, you really need to take this seriously. And also for the first 6 months, it kind of felt like in my gut that like I was supposed to be doing something different. And I was also dealing with like the guilt of not working all the time because I'm used to working 40 to 60 hours a week. And now I'm like sleeping until 10. Like that, it was just a shift I did not really prepare for. And 6 months go by. And I finally am like, Drew, get your shit together. Start focusing on photography. Because it was also one of those things, like, I'm not even joking, y'all, like, in my gut, I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something more. And I just think in hindsight, it was like, I was just, I don't know, 6 months in, I get my shit together, doing photography. I really start like going full force. And then it just all felt kind of more aligned. I was like, okay, it really was photography that I'm supposed to be doing. Like I was supposed to really be focusing on this. I just for some reason was getting in my own way and in my own thoughts. And, that's also when I start dealing with like imposter syndrome, which I'm going to talk about this in like different episodes of, how I overcame my imposter syndrome and, how I listened to my gut and all of that. But the first 2 years of me working for myself definitely were such big lessons of what it's really like to be an entrepreneur and what it's really like to work for yourself and like realistically how everything is. And, I think I'm on year 4 now. And it's like I just wouldn't change it for the world. And if there's anything that I could do to help other people get to a position where they can quit their jobs, they can live the life that they've wanted. Like, I want to be a part of that for someone. And that is why I'm starting Daydreamers Club. And I just want people to know out there that, like, it is fucking possible. It is possible. It's probably not going to happen the way you want it and the way exactly that you want to plan things because we cannot control those things, but it can happen. And I am just so grateful that this is like my current life right now. That I get to do this, that I get to talk, that I get to encourage people. And I really want to also like build this as a community. So that's kind of like my story. I know it was kind of long-winded, little ADHD in there too. Hopefully I stayed on track enough. But coming from always the mindset of like, you're never going to be good enough, or, you're not going to go anywhere in life because you're lazy. But now to just easily be able to walk into those same rooms and be successful, like I have already done it, doing the things that I get to do, like not having to conform to the societal norms of having to go to college, doing everything with a partner, whatever it may be. Like, I have more than proven myself. And, I've now in the chapter of proving things to myself. Like, I am pushing myself to do this podcast, not to prove anything to anyone else, because I've already done that. It's to prove it to myself. And also show other people that, like, hey, my story, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I had the most traumatic upbringing in the whole world. But, like, there were parts that really deeply, deeply wounded and affected me and my mindset that I've had to overcome. And it is just part of the entrepreneur story. And so with this podcast too, I am really wanting to highlight everyone else's story. I'm going to have guests on here, ideally every other week. Also, this is one of those things where it might not be the most perfect podcast because I'm still trying to figure it out. And just with anything in life, like I'm just going with the flow. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm just a girl. Just come on this journey with me, if you will. But ideally every other week, I have a new guest who I can speak with. I can share their story. I want to hear what they've overcome, what it's like for them to be an entrepreneur, and like any advice as well. And it's going to be from completely different communities of people. Like I have someone who owns a coffee truck, some web designers, some real estate agent. I want it to be from people who are of all walks of life. And if you are interested in being interviewed and having a conversation with me about your story, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Even if you are in the middle of that story and you have not fully jumped to the next level that you want yet, I still want to sit down and talk to you. And if you could encourage anyone else to do the same, I am so here for it. I hope y'all enjoyed my very first episode of Daydreamers Club. I cannot wait for y'all to keep listening and see how this podcast evolves. I think you'll also notice in the first few episodes and stuff, like each episode, I kind of get more comfortable. So bear with me. Again, I'm figuring it out. But I'm really, really excited to be here and to be here with y'all. And I cannot wait to share everything with y'all. If you ever have questions for me, I will be doing Q&As. You can submit them via email. You can Instagram message me, and check us out at Daydreamers Club Pod on Instagram and on YouTube, and daydreamersclubpod.com. But thank you guys. Until next time.